In the previous lesson, we drew a square to represent the fixture geometry. In this lesson, we'll explore a different method called silhouette boundary. To separate the geometry we just created from our new geometry, let's create a new level. We'll use number 107 and we'll call it Fixture Setup Wireframe 2. To clean things up a bit, I will turn off the display for level 106. We're still in the same construction plane and still at the same construction depth, so I'll go straight to the Shapes group and select Silhouette Boundary. The prompt indicates to select solid bodies, surfaces, or polygonal meshes. I'll select the solid and then End Selection. The Silhouette Boundary function panel appears, and as you can see, there are options for tolerancing and whether to fit arcs or splines. I'll accept the defaults, and we'll click the green OK button. In the Levels Manager, let's turn off Level 10 to hide the part, and we'll see that we created a silhouette boundary around the chain guard part. Now let's explore some different geometry creation tools. The end result is I want to create another rectangle. So let's go into our Lines tools, and we're going to create a line using the line parallel. Following the prompt here, we'll see that it asks us to select a line. So I'm going to select this line right here. Now you'll see that it says select the point to place the parallel line through. So I can click anywhere, but I could also snap to other geometry such as points or any tangent entities. So for example, if I change this to tangent, now I can select to this line or this arc here, and it would be tangent to that. Same thing down here. So if I click this arc, now you notice this line is at a precise value of 13.04396 because more specifically it's tangent to that arc. Let's click OK and we'll investigate this. Just to do some quick checking here, I'm going to create a line right from here, go up here, and if I zoom in, we can see in fact it is tangent, and that makes sense because originally we created the parallel line tangent to that. Let's hit undo, and let's do the same thing down here. So another line, snap from here down here, and you'll notice this line is not actually tangent, right? It doesn't touch the arc. I'm going to go ahead and delete that line by selecting it on the screen and then hitting delete on my keyboard. We can also use some modify functions to extend and break this line we just created. If I go up to the modify group on the wireframe tab, I can choose modify length. And since we're in millimeters, let's change this to 20 millimeters. So this is the distance we're going to be extending. And in this case, we're lengthening the line. So I simply click on the line and you'll see that it gets extended. I click it again and it gets extended. I can do the same thing on the other side, and notice you click closer to the end that you want to extend and it will then extend that line. If you choose the break option and then I do it, you'll notice that it extends the line, but that 20 millimeter line I just created is a separate line. It's not connected to the original line. So these are some tools that are used inside the modify length option. I'm going to go ahead and select these two and hit delete on my keyboard since I don't need them. Our main goal is to use this line in conjunction with another line on the opposite side and a line on the top and the bottom to create another rectangle. Now, what I've seen people do in the past is they would use this line down here as the bottom line for their rectangle or square. I would recommend against doing that, and here's why. If we continue to use this line, I could actually go down here and create a line right from here across to here and then trim it up. So this line would end here and then it would continue on over here. Well, the problem is this piece of geometry is now shared with two different shapes. One shape would be the silhouette boundary and the other shape would be the rectangle. So I would recommend using a completely separate line for that. So here's how we do that. I first click OK and then hit undo. So in this case, if I want a line that goes across the bottom here, I'm going to go to my line endpoints tool, and I'll actually just create this line right from here this way. And now I can use that extend tool or the modify length tool like we saw. Let's change this to 200. And I'm going to modify this length. Notice it goes all the way across the bottom. So now what we have is we have two lines that are on top of each other. One line which is shorter, which is part of the silhouette boundary, and one line which is longer, which is part of the bottom shape of the rectangle. And before I click OK, I want to make sure this is not set to break, because I want this line to be one solid line. So I click OK, and I'm all set. So now let's create the top line. Well, the simplest way of doing that is creating a line parallel, clicking this line, and then snapping to this tangent line up here, or this tangent arc. Same thing with this line over here. We're going to snap it right to there. So now we know a tangent. I'll fit it to the screen. And now I have the beginning of a square or rectangle here, and what I'll use is the trim tool to trim these up. So I go to my trim entities command, and I'm going to set my trim to trim and my method to auto. And the way this works is quite simple. You first select the geometry you want to trim, like let's say this one, but you select the area that you want to keep. So I wouldn't select here because I want to get rid of that. So the step is you select what you want to keep, and then you select what you want to trim it to. In this case, I want to trim it to this line. And you notice it removes that entity. Same thing here. I want to select this line and trim it to here, and it removes this. Now the trim command will also extend. So if I zoom out, I can select this line and trim it to there. And you'll see that it actually extends it. I'll trim this one to here. Same thing with these. And then these two down here. So now we have a rectangle, or possibly a square, that completely surrounds this part. Let's finish this up by doing an offset chain like we saw before. Select this geometry. And I get confirmation that the entire outside shape is selected. If it's not selected, that means I might have a gap somewhere that perhaps I did not trim it properly. I click OK, indicate the side, and I want to do 1 inch, move it, and I'll keep modify fillet corners off. I click OK, and now my new rectangle or square is a little off of this shape. Let's right click, hit fit to screen. Now I did notice up here we have a little bit of an overlap. And that's not a big concern here, but if I was to do this again, I might create the geometry differently and make sure that I'm snapping to this arc as a tangency as opposed to this arc. So this was another way of creating geometry to surround this part, and we'll explore another method in the next lesson.